Today is the 5th of May 2026. I explained yesterday how momentum builds through consistency and continuity, and how one should practice in a steady and continuous way so that this momentum can develop. Under this topic, I also explained how to practice in day-to-day activities without missing any object or moment. At the end, I emphasize the importance of consistent and continuous mindfulness, and I would like to continue this discussion. If mindfulness is not continuous and lacks momentum, it becomes very difficult to understand the nature of physical phenomena and especially mental phenomena. The mind is a reality that is mysterious, profound, deep, and subtle. Because of its depth and subtlety, it is difficult to see and understand clearly. There is the thinking mind, planning mind, wandering mind, remembering mind, fantasizing mind, daydreaming mind, judging mind, and analyzing mind. Then there is the mind, criticizing mind, comparing mind, and the mind that starts talking to itself, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly. At times the mind is lazy, at other times energetic, sometimes it is active, sometimes inactive. It can be anxious or suddenly calm and untroubled. It may become courageous, then quickly discouraged. It may feel sharp and clear, or blunt and confused, bright or dull. You may observe the angry mind, the greedy mind, the jealous mind, the deluded mind, the restless mind, the tired mind, or the doubtful mind, the proud or arrogant mind. So each of these mental states is a different type of consciousness arising due to various causes and conditions, then passing away, giving rise to another. Through careful observation, you begin to see the mind is not one thing, but a flow of many different mental moments. It is not fixed or stable, but constantly changing. So, so in order to truly recognize and understand all these various types of mind in detail, your mindfulness must be continuous, continuous and uninterrupted, only with moment to the steady and moment to moment awareness. Can you observe the rising and passing away of each mental state as it is without missing or merging them? Meditation is a process of getting to know your own body and especially your own mind. It is often compared to looking into a mirror. When you look in the mirror, you do so to see what's on your face, whether something looks good or bad, or whether your clothes are fitting properly and is and in good condition. And when you notice something wrong, maybe some dirt, a stain, or something out of place, you immediately try to fix it because you want to look clean and presentable. In the same way, through meditation, you observe the state of your mind. Through meditation, you come to truly know your own mind, how beautiful it is, or how dirty it has become, how strong or how weak it is, how mature, immature it is, how healthy, unhealthy it is, how upgraded or degraded it is, how patient or impatient it is, how generous or stingy it is, how forgiving or vengeful it is, how wise or deluded, how collected or scattered it is, how stable or reactive it is. You begin to see these qualities, not as concepts, but as direct experiences. And just as you would clean your face when you see dirt in the mirror, you begin to purify the mind, not out of vanity, but out of a deep, wise, deep, and a deep wish to be free from suffering and to cultivate true inner beauty. That's why meditation is also known as a way beautifying oneself without any cosmetics or makeup. It is a beautification that happens moment by moment, second by second, breath by breath, step by step. It is an inner cleansing that brings out a deep natural radiance, one that no external product can ever provide. In addition, the better you understand your own mind, the easier it becomes to master it. Just like a lion tamer who knows the nature of the lion, its habits, its triggers, its strengths and weaknesses, can train and guide it with confidence. The one who truly understands the mind can gradually tame it, no matter how wild or unruly it may seem at times. When you know someone very well, like a close friend, you also know how to behave with her, what kind of conversation to have and what to avoid, what makes her happy or sad, what might trigger her anger, what kind of words can comfort or console her, and what kind of speech might hurt or discourage her. Similarly, when you come to know your own mind deeply, you begin to understand how to relate to it wisely. You know thoughts, what thoughts to entertain and which to drop, what conditions support calm and clarity, and what situations tend to disturb or agitate it. You learn how to encourage the mind when it is weak, how to calm it when it is restless, and how to guide it, not forcefully on the path of peace, but gently. This inner understanding is also the key to preventing harmful states like anger, greed, and guilt. When you understand how anger arises, usually from unmet expectation, ego, or pain, you begin to catch it early before it takes place, before it takes over. When you understand the nature of greed, how it feeds on discontent and restlessness, you can pause and reflect before chasing after what you don't truly need. And when guilt arises, instead of sinking into self-blame, you learn to acknowledge the mistake, make amends if needed, and then gently bring the mind back to the present. Through awareness and understanding, prevention becomes natural. There are no longer just reaction to the mind. You are wisely guiding it. Uh, when you understand an illness thoroughly, it becomes much easier to prevent. It becomes much easier to prevent it in advance and to treat it effectively. You know its cause, its early signs, and the condition that allow it to grow, so you can respond wisely and at the right time. In the same way, when you understand your mind and its defilements clearly and thoroughly, it becomes easier to prevent them from arising and to remove them when they do arise. You begin to recognize their causes, their subtle beginnings, and the conditions that sustain them. With this understanding, you are able to apply effort and mindfulness at the right moment, preventing unwholesome states before they take hold and abandoning them quickly if, if they appear. Thus, a clear understanding of the mind is essential for both prevention and cure. The deeper or more precise the understanding, the more effective the prevention and the more complete the cure, keeping the mind balanced, healthy, and functioning properly. This is what we have been emphasizing from the very beginning, the prevention and the cure of mental illness through understanding the mind itself. When the mind is not understood, defilements such as greed, anger, and delusion can easily arise and take hold. But when the mind is clearly absorbed with continuous mindfulness, these defilements are recognized at their very early stages, prevented from growing, and when they do arise, are abandoned more easily. Moreover, the clear understanding does not only help in removing unwholesome states, it also supports the development and strengthening of wholesome qualities such as calm, clarity, and wisdom. In this way, the mind becomes not only free from disturbances but also increasingly stable and refined. Therefore, cultivating continuous and consistent mindfulness, which leads to deep understanding, is the key to both preventing and curing mental illness, as well as maintaining a balance or well-balanced and healthy mind. I have already mentioned mindfulness serves as a mental guard uh, with the power to protect, defend, and keep the mind safe from unwholesome states and defilements. It is the quality that watches over the mind, keeping it from being overtaken by greed, hatred, delusion, or distraction. As a result, the mind stream becomes free from defilements. And when the mind is free from defilements, calmness and peacefulness naturally arise. At the same time, mindfulness gives rise to joy, happiness, and mental comfort, qualities that nourish and sustain the, the meditative part. That happiness or mental bliss becomes the proximate cause for the arising of concentration samadhi. So mental comfort or mental bliss becomes the proximate cause for the arising of concentration samadhi. This is how mindfulness plays a vital role by guarding the mind and clearing away defilements. It creates a calm, joyful, and blissful mental environment, allowing concentration to arise naturally. A good moment of mindfulness is essential for concentration to arise. Concentration does not come by force or willpower alone. It depends on the presence of continuity of mindfulness. Continuity of the mindfulness. This is also why we cultivate mindfulness not just in formal sitting or walking meditation, but also during daily activities, standing, moving, eating, or walking. The flow of mindfulness throughout the day creates the condition for stable and wholesome concentration to develop naturally. That is why in the past few Dhamma talks, I have been emphasizing the unbroken continuity of mindfulness. The longer the continuity of unbroken mindfulness, the deeper the mindfulness becomes. And the deeper the mindfulness, the easier it is for concentration, samadhi to arise. Now, having laid the foundation through mindfulness, it is time to speak about concentration, known in Pali as samadhi, and technically it is also known as ekaggata. Ekaggata meaning one-pointedness of mind. The characteristic of samadhi is non-dispersal or non-dissipation or non-scatteredness. This means that when concentration is present, the mind does not disperse, dissipate, or scatter. Instead, it sticks with the object of observation, remains calm, and stays firmly present with that object. And the function of samadhi is collective or unification. It unifies or gathers together all the coexisting mental factors onto a single object. For example, when you observe the rising and falling of abdomen, the concentration, if concentration is present, all the mental factors, including the mind itself, are unified on that rising. When you observe the falling and concentration is present, it collects the mind and all associated mental factors into the fallen, not allowing the mind to scatter. Similarly, when you observe sensations, movements of the feet, or daily actions, if concentration is present, the mind remains stable and collected. All the mental energies are, are well unified in the object of observation rather than being pulled away in different direction. So there are two analogies mentioned in the text to clarify the functions of concentration samadhi. The first is that of a king on the battlefield. Just as a king, upon seeing which part of his army is weakening, goes directly to that spot, and wherever the king goes, the army regathers, strengthens, and regains order. And once the army is once the enemy is driven away, the troops again rally around the king. In the same way, in this mental battlefield of meditation, when the associated mental factors become scattered or distracted, it is samadhi, concentration, that brings them back together. It restores focus, unification, and mental order. This is the first example, first analogy. The second analogy is that of water binding flour to make dough. When you make dough, you begin with dry flour. If you pour in water and knead it, the flour particles come together and form a single cohesive mass. Without water, the flour remains loose and scattered, but once water is added, it holds everything together. In the same way, samadhi functions like water. It binds together all the associated mental factors, allowing the mind to become unified, stable, and workable, just like well-kneaded dough. This is about function, about manifestation. Calmness is the first manifestation of samadhi. Calmness is the first manifestation of samadhi. This means that when concentration is present, the mind is calm and composed. This is because the defilements that disturb, agitate, and cause restlessness in the mind are absent. When these disturbing factors are suppressed, the mind naturally becomes peaceful, steady, and quiet, revealing the presence of samadhi. A candle flame remains calm and steady when there is no wind. Likewise, a lake on a windless day is completely still, its surface smooth and undisturbed, clearly reflecting the sky. In the same way, when the mind is free from defilements, it becomes calm, steady, and clear. I have mentioned that when mindfulness is present, it protects, blocks, and defends the mind, keeping it safe from defilements by not admitting them and freeing the mind from the influence. So, mindfulness also helps to free the mind from distractions. However, when concentration, samadhi develops, it goes further. It suppresses the defilements, suppresses the defilements more deeply and effectively. As a result, the mind becomes purer, cleaner, and a sense of calmness and stillness becomes more vivid and stable. In fact, concentration goes beyond simply holding of distractions. It eliminates defilements temporarily. The text refer to this as tadanga pahana, which means dispelling defilements by way of temporary suppression or momentary elimination. When concentration is strong, defilements such as greed, hatred, restlessness, and doubt are cut off at the surface level. They do not arise in the moment. As a result, the mind becomes cleaner, purer, and more peaceful. And this clarity allows for deeper, deeper insight to arise. Here, I would like to talk about the three levels of elimination of defilements. There are three levels of elimination of defilements. First, in Pali, tadanga pahana, meaning temporarily elimination. Temporary elimination, this refers to the momentary elimination of defilements through the arising of opposing wholesome mental states in meditation. when mindfulness and especially concentration are strong, defilements cannot arise. They are cut off at that very moment. They are eliminated or dispelled temporarily. As long as the wholesome state is present, this type of elimination can be applied, but can be applied not only during formal meditation, but also in daily life. Like when anger arises and you consciously cultivate loving kindness, its opposite, that is momentary elimination. When you feel stinginess and you intentionally develop generosity, that too is temporary elimination through substitution. When envy arises and you reflect with appreciative joy toward others' success, the defilement is momentarily removed. In each case, the defilement, unwholesome state is not allowed to dominate the mind. Similarly, when laziness or sloth arise and you intentionally arouse effort, that too is a temporary elimination through substitution. When ill will or cruelty appears and you consciously develop compassion, the defilement is temporarily removed. However, momentary elimination of defilements during meditation is more effective because of the effort, mindfulness, and concentration involved are generated through mental development or mental cultivation. In this case, the mind is trained, collected, and intentionally directed toward wholesome states. Momentary elimination is like uh, lightning flashing in a dark night. For a brief moment, the darkness disappears and everything becomes clear and visible. This is a momentary elimination of darkness. In the same way, when momentary concentration arises during meditation, it dispels the defilements temporarily, though they are not yet eradicated. They are pushed away and the mind becomes clear, focused, and undisturbed. Just like the flash of light that overcomes the darkness, even if only for a moment. This is about momentary elimination. Second, Vikambana Pahana in Pali, suppression or elimination for more than a moment. More than a moment. This refers to the deeper suppression or elimination of defilements through powerful mental development, particularly deep concentration such as jhana, absorption. In this state, defilements are not just momentarily dispelled, as in the Danga Pahana, as in momentary elimination, but are held at bay more forcefully or effectively, unable to arise for the duration of that absorption. However, this is still not permanent eradication. When concentration fades, the defilements can reappear unless they are removed through deeper insight and path wisdom. It is said that this suppression keeps the defilements at bay, at a distance, so they do not disturb the mind for a longer period. Just example is given, just like when someone pushes away moss or floating weeds on the surface of water in order to draw clean water. The moss does not immediately return. It takes time to float back. In the same way, through deep concentration, defilements are pushed away and held off, creating a space for clarity and purity in the mind, even is temporarily. And this type of elimination is especially experienced when one develops jhana absorption. However, it can also be experienced during vipassana meditation. You may wonder, how is that possible? So before answering this question, I would first like to clarify a common misunderstanding about concentration that many meditators have. There are two types of samadhi concentration. Two types of concentration. And the first is called continuous samadhi, which is developed by meditating on a single object, just one object continuously. And this object is usually not an ultimate reality, but a conceptual object, such as the breath or kasina digs. And this type of concentration is developed in pure tranquility meditation, samatha meditation, tranquility meditation, where the primary requirement is for the mind to stay focused on one object to the total exclusion of all other objects. When this stability becomes deep and unshakable, it leads to absorption jhana. And since the samatha practitioner has only one object to observe, they continuously focus on that meditation object, always keeping it in view And through this sustained observation, the practitioner develops preliminary or preparatory concentration, followed by axis concentration, in Pali, Parikrama Samadhi and Upachara Samadhi. Upachara Samadhi, also known as neighboring concentration, before entering the deepest level of concentration, known as absorption or fixed concentration, Appana Samadhi. At this stage, the mind is consistently and firmly fixed on the meditation object. So, a common misunderstanding among many meditators is the belief that concentration is present only when they can observe one object continuously for a long period of time. For example, when they are able to observe the rising and falling of the abdomen, or the movements of the feet continuously and clearly, they assume that they have concentration. Otherwise, they think their concentration is lacking. As a result, during interviews, they often report something like, "My concentration is no good," or "I have no concentration," simply because they they couldn't stay with a single object continuously. This reflects a limited understanding of how concentration arises and functions, especially in the context of vipassana meditation, where the observation of changing phenomena, not just one static object, is essential. If you were practicing tranquility meditation, samatha meditation, then your assumption might be correct that continuous attention on a single object indicates strong concentration, but this is vipassana meditation, and the nature of concentration here is different. In this vipassana meditation, meditators develop khanika samadhi, momentary concentration. This type of concentration arises moment by moment in connection with each object that appears. Moment by moment in connection with each object that appears, and it depends on the strength of mindfulness. When the mindfulness is strong and continuous, momentary concentration is also present and effective. And also, don't forget the characteristic and function of the concentration, which I mentioned earlier. Whether it is momentary concentration, khanika samadhi, or absorption concentration, apana samadhi, its characteristic is non-dispersion or non-scatteredness, meaning the mind is not distracted or spread out over multiple objects, and its function is to collect and unify the associated mental factors, including the mind itself, onto the meditative object. So even in Vipassana, when your mindfulness is strong and the mind is clearly aware of the arising object, be it the rising and falling, a pain, a thought, or any other phenomena, concentration is already present, doing its job. It doesn't have to be long or continuous on one object. It just need to be well applied in each moment. So, so concentration in Vipassana does not mean keeping the mind fixed on the same object continuously as in samatha meditation. Rather, it means maintaining consistent mindfulness and clarity with each object as it arises moment by moment. When meditators truly understand this, they no longer feel discouraged when the object changes frequently or when the attention moves from one phenomenon to another. In fact, that is exactly what is supposed to happen in Vipassana meditation, because the practice is about observing the reality of impermanence. The reality of impermanence, then unsatisfactoriness and non-self as it naturally unfolds. There are still a few things to discuss about how we can keep defilements at bay in this Vipassana meditation. We will continue tomorrow. For today, may you be able to develop concentration through the continuous cultivation of mindfulness, and may you enjoy true inner peace and calm.